Good morning, and welcome to the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association's annual Industry Forecast Forum, an important analysis on the current state of the industry and what to expect in 2021. I'm Kim Sabo, President and CEO of the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association, and I welcome you from the gorgeous Ritz-Carlton Dove Mountain Resort in Marana. I'd like to thank AZLTA board member Jerry Fisher and HSL Properties, owners of Dove Mountain, as well as General Manager Steven Sanazi and team for providing this picturesque backdrop in the gorgeous Sonoran Desert. And last but not least, thanks to each of you for joining us for what is certain to be a very informative update from our national industry partners, advocating day in and day out from Capitol Hill, U.S. Travel. We'll also get an in-depth overview of our industry, including a focus on Southern Arizona from key strategic partner STR. AZLTA and our members work vigorously to serve, support, and advocate on behalf of our industry. And today's programming would not be possible without our generous sponsors, HSL Properties and Visit Tucson. We're grateful for your support. We certainly couldn't do this without the support of our entire board of directors, and I would like to recognize AZLTA Board Chairman Brent Durad, President and CEO of Visit Tucson, for his incredible leadership this year, as we've navigated the most unprecedented and challenging of times.
Thank you, Kim, for those kind words and your leadership. 2020 was not the year any of us expected. In the midst of our busiest travel and tourism season, the COVID-19 pandemic brought our industry to a dramatic halt overnight. Hotel occupancy percentages, normally in the high 80s in March, plummeted to single digits immediately. Employees were laid off or furloughed, and businesses struggled to keep the lights on and doors open. But with any challenge comes an opportunity for community building and collaboration. I am so incredibly proud of the resilient industry and how we've come together to provide help for those in need, develop standards and protocols to ensure the safety and well-being of guests and employees, and advocate for much-needed relief at the state and federal levels. 2019 was a record-breaking year for Arizona's tourism industry. Our great state hosted 47 million overnight visitors, up 3% from the previous year. This record number of visitors accounted for a nearly 5% increase in visitor spending, bringing that number up to $25.6 billion for the year. And tourism accounted for $3.8 billion in combined local, state, and federal tax revenues. These record numbers have made the 2020 economic impact on our industry even more devastating. To date, we in Arizona have already lost more than $7 billion in visitor spending.
As case numbers decline and public health guidelines begin to ease, this resilient industry is leading with solutions. We're leading the way by working to rebuild consumer confidence through the implementation and promotion of elevated health and safety protocols. In mid-May, AZLTA launched the AZ Safe and Clean Certification Initiative, an effort to rebuild and restore vital consumer confidence and awareness about the safety and cleanliness of our businesses in response to COVID-19. As our hotels and resorts gradually reopen amenities and promote staycations this fall, we want travelers and guests to know our properties have taken swift action to ensure a safe and clean stay. The AZ Safe and Clean certification was created in partnership with the American Hotel and Lodging Association's Safe Stay Initiative, which builds upon various sanitation best practices and recommendations from national hospitality and public health experts. This program is an innovative way for the industry to show guests and prospective travelers the hard work being done to keep these properties clean and safe for our guests and for our employees, the backbone of our industry. We want our guests to have peace of mind that our properties are going above and beyond to provide a relaxing, safe, and high-quality experience. Tourism is the lifeblood of our state's economy, and we must ensure that we're doing everything we can from a local, state, and national perspective to help the industry recover and recover stronger than ever. We're only a few months away from the next legislative session at the state capitol, and our advocacy team continues to work diligently to educate lawmakers on the vital importance of tourism promotion, not only to recapture Arizona's market share, but grow our market share of visitors from around the world. The return on investment is undeniable. According to Rounds Consulting Group, for every $10 million invested in tourism promotion, $100 million is returned in the form of tax revenues. We will continue to work closely with the Arizona Office of Tourism to ensure the state invests in promoting Arizona as a premier travel destination. We will also continue to advocate for the establishment of tourism marketing authorities, a tool that will serve as a critical promotional lifeline to our local communities throughout the state.
As you know, there is a lot going on in our nation's capital, and our team is working closely with our partners, U.S. Travel and the American Hotel and Lodging Association, to urge Congress to pass legislation critical to our industry's recovery. Our national partners have been working day and night to fight for our industry on Capitol Hill and keep us apprised of the latest news, and we are incredibly grateful for their leadership. To provide an update from Washington, D.C., we are pleased to have with us today Tori Emerson Barnes, Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and Policy at the U.S. Travel Association. Tori leads the government relations, policy development, communications, marketing, and research teams at U.S. Travel. She was appointed to this role in March 2019 after serving as the association's Senior Vice President of Government Relations. She most recently served as Executive Director of Federal Affairs and managed a diverse portfolio that included tax, trade, fuel, economy, transportation, pension issues, and political operations. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Tori Barnes.
Hi, y'all. I wish we could be together in person, and I'm very much looking forward to when we can be face-to-face again. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this event and to have a chance to share an update on everything U.S. Travel is doing to help our industry right now. These past several months have been incredibly challenging, likely the most challenging times that we have ever faced. Each state has had to navigate their own unique circumstances. I know Arizona was in the height of your tourism season when this all began, and that there continue to be hurdles to overcome as we head towards recovery. Since the onset of the pandemic, U.S. Travel has pivoted our focus to securing the relief and protection the industry so desperately needs, while considering what stimulus proposals and ultimately recovery-focused efforts can do to bring the industry back more quickly. We are educating lawmakers every day on the devastating impact the pandemic has had on travel businesses and employees. After reaching a low of 51% in May, twice the unemployment rate during the worst year of the Great Depression, unemployment in the leisure and hospitality sector remained at 34% in August. Losses in spending are projected to reach $505 billion by the end of this year and $1 trillion by the end of 2023. U.S. Travel's president and CEO Roger Dow, as well as CEOs across the travel industry, have held several meetings with the Trump administration since March, including with the president himself, Vice President Pence, Secretary of Treasury Mnuchin, and dozens of members of Congress, making sure our industry and the overwhelming impact the coronavirus has had is at the forefront of conversations when it comes to the rebuilding of our economy and the recovery of American jobs. While the data carries significant weight, it is your stories that show the reality behind the numbers. The strength of our message is more powerful when our entire industry is carrying it forward. Through industry-wide grassroots activation, sending action alerts, posting on social media, and when lawmakers hear directly from you, it really matters. This is made very clear during the first ever virtual Hill Week this summer, and we're so grateful for the involvement of many across Arizona during that important week.
Our first virtual Capitol Hill Week. Obviously, all of these things are done much better face-to-face in person, but we're using every means possible to get our story across.
The PPP program, it's been so beneficial for so many businesses, but the 501c6s and 4s, they were left out. So assuming there's another package that comes forward maybe in July, the people you see on this call today, they would greatly appreciate it if those entities could be involved.
The traveler has not only sort of that permission to travel, to book travel, but that added incentive, such as the $4,000 travel tax credit, that really we need to give real dollars that will help to stimulate that kind of travel growth. Through our our collective efforts since March, we have secured a great deal of relief for the industry to help our businesses and our workers. The CARES Act, passed in March, provided key funding for much of the industry at the height of the pandemic. And U.S. Travel has been working since then to improve and build upon provisions in the CARES Act and make sure every part of the travel industry can access the relief that you need. Right now, we are urgently calling on Congress and the administration to reach an agreement on additional relief, protection, and stimulus, but negotiations remain stalled. What is clear, very, very clear, is that small travel businesses and destination marketing organizations desperately need help. And Congress can provide this by extending the Paycheck Protection Program, expanding eligibility to DMOs of all statuses and sizes, and allowing a second draw loan on PPP. This is the minimum that we need. And we are still strongly pushing for a larger package that includes legislation meaningful for the broader travel industry, including providing grants from the Economic Development Administration to promote safe and healthy domestic travel, expanding the recovery sector loan programs for longer assistance, expanding the employee retention tax credit, securing testing and contact tracing improvements. Senator Sinema is a co-sponsor of the TEST Act and has truly championed this important legislation. Frequent and easily accessibility to testing is absolutely a must. We are also asking for $13 billion in additional emergency assistance for U.S. airports. Right now, Congress has a lot of competing priorities, but in order for America's economy to recover, for Americans to be rehired, the travel industry has to be at the top of this list. Trust that we will continue to fight, and we appreciate your ongoing involvement and support when we come to you to sign letters, send messages, and to contact your members of Congress. Because it's clear, we are stronger together. We saw our collective efforts pay off this summer with the passage of the Great American Outdoors Act in July, a true show of bipartisanship, also championed by Senator Sinema. The significant achievement addresses an issue that we have been fighting for alongside many of you, protecting our national parks and public lands.
I remember a lifetime ago when we started this journey. We were inspired by each other to create something greater than ourselves, a place to feel alive and ensure what always was will always be. When he saved a nation and they saved the world. When we were divided and we were united. We aimed higher and never stopped looking up. But along the way, my roads grew old. My bridges shouldered years of weight. My trails became well-traveled. I was there for them. And I'll be there for you. Will you be there for me?
Arizona is no stranger to the strain on our national parks caused by poor funding, and this bill will help all of our nation's parks by providing funds to address the deferred maintenance backlog, ensuring that every national park is better prepared to welcome travelers both now and into the future. This comes at a pivotal time. Americans right now are more comfortable being outside, and our parks offer that and so much more. I, for one, would love to be at the Grand Canyon right now. There are signs that we are headed in the right direction, towards recovery, excitement to travel, openness to travel information, and importantly, perception of how safe it is to get out there right now has improved over the last month, and we're seeing that reflected in travel behavior. Providing travelers assurances that they can be safe while traveling is the first step towards getting Americans moving again. And our industry has done an incredible job putting enhanced cleanliness measures in place across every business in every sector. Arizona has been especially terrific at carrying out these practices and bringing them forward, providing a certification to hotels that fulfill certain cleaning requirements, among other SMART protocols. But a safe and healthy travel experience requires that we all do our part, and that includes wearing a mask, practicing safe distancing, and washing hands regularly. Messages that we also must drive home to our visitors and even residents. This must be a shared responsibility. While we must continue to keep a close eye on what's happening with the coronavirus around the country, we are seeing that Americans are becoming more open to the ideas of making plans, thinking ahead, and eventually traveling. And now that we have an opportunity to inspire travelers and give them the feeling of anticipation again by booking a trip to take in the future when they're ready. An industry-wide campaign was launched on September 8th, designed by the Let's Go There Coalition, and it's aiming to empower Americans to imagine the joy of travel again.
Someone once said, life is what happens when you're busy making plans. But the truth is, in a life without plans, nothing really happens. So let's go there. Let's make some plans. Let's feel that feeling once again. The rush of excitement as you search and imagine that perfect getaway. Trip. Vacation. Let's go there. Somewhere. Anywhere. Let's save a date, book a flight, and get to the destination that will feel like no other. Because when the time is right, when the heart says go, we'll be ready. So let's book a trip. Let's aim for the horizon and shoot for the moon. Let's go there.
I hope that many of you are already involved, and if you're not, it's very easy to be. There are materials and ideas available in a toolkit accessible on our website. Now more than ever, we need the chorus of all of our voices, reminding everyone that travel is necessary for our overall well-being. More than anything, travel brings happiness and enriches our lives. We must return to the excitement and anticipation of travel to revive the economy. Before I close, I would like to take a moment to recognize the resiliency of Arizona and the leadership of Kim Sabo. The collaboration that you have shown with each other, your communities, and your local leaders. It truly embodies the spirit of travel and the strength of our industry. Thank you for all you do. We will get through this.
Thank you, Tori, and thank you so much for those very kind words. We so greatly appreciate the extraordinary work that U.S. Travel is doing, and thank you for your efforts and the efforts of all of U.S. Travel, led by President and CEO Roger Dow. Your efforts have never been more important than they are now, and we're very, very grateful. Next, I'd like to introduce our next strategic partner. It is STR, which provides premium data, benchmarking analytics, and marketplace insights for global hospitality sectors. And with us today to provide an analysis on where we are today and provide us a potential snapshot of where we may be going into 2021, please join me in welcoming Senior Business Development Executive Chase Acer with STR. Chase, thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you, Kim. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I just quickly wanted to say thank you.
I think Chase is on mute.
We there? I think I figured it out. Can you hear me now, Kim?
Thank you.
Great. I just wanted to say thank you, Kim, very quickly for the opportunity to speak with you with this group today. And thank you to everyone at the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association for putting this event on. And lastly, to everyone who's attending today, taking time out of their day to join us. So what we'll do is we will start the presentation.
I'm going to wave goodbye for now. I'll see you at the end of your presentation, Chase. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. So again, thank you all. And before we start, I just wanted to quickly, for those of you who may not be aware of STR or who are aware of STR, but maybe not as aware of the data that we provide. When it comes to the performance sample, this data is collected from hoteliers across the globe from the property management systems. We collect this data on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. That data is then collected, aggregated, and then sent out again, either on a daily, a weekly, or a monthly report. We've done this for over 35 years. This data comes from over 180 countries, 68,000 hotels, and that equals just over 9 million rooms. So as you can tell, there's a lot of data coming in and out of our offices each day, and we certainly appreciate all of our data providers. Like most companies, we do have a COVID-19 landing page. I encourage you all to take time to visit this page, as we do provide updates on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Again, this presentation will be sent to each of you who joined today, so no need to take notes if you don't want. And again, all this information on COVID-19 and the performance and the forecast will all be made available. So we stay on track. Here's a quick agenda. We will look at the total US, then we'll dive into the market. Then we'll look at the US pipeline as well as the local pipeline. Then we'll look at the forecast for both the US and the Tucson area. And then we'll finish with some Q&A. So let's first look at the fresh off the press August 2020 data. Again, let's look at some highlights here. August RevPAR did decline 47.3%. However, it does continue a less bad movement for where July was down 52%. So again, we're looking for some bright spots here. Same story for ADR. It stood at negative 22, almost 23%, but again, slightly better than July. That was just around negative 25. As we look at the segmentation, the group RevPAR, again, down almost 73% compared to this time last year, but better than July. It was almost 81%. And I will say that as an industry, there were over 1 million rooms sold as it pertains to groups in August. And lastly, the room demand for August was up almost 5 million for the month compared to July. So some highlights there. Again, I know it's nothing close to what we're used to seeing, but you do need to look at some high points. Again, this is the August 2020 data. I just thought it would be good to look at. We looked at percentage changes, but at absolute numbers, we see here again at occupancy, half the rooms were empty in the month of August, down almost 32% from last year at this time. And again, I mean, you know, you take that occupancy, the ADR, the RevPAR, same story across the board. But again, things are certainly better than they were in the end of March, April, and May. So we have to continue to look forward. On that note, as we look at the year-to-date numbers, you know, the August results were really close to the July year-to-date results, in that really it was the same when you round up one digit. And what that does is that takes in January and February, which we would all love to go back to at this time, but also adds in the, you know, again, end of March, April, May, the really, really bad months. So though this is less bad, you take all that into account, and this is where we're at. So just again, would like to show, you know, really how a mixture of the entire year plays in, and you can see the results on this year to date. Now, this is very difficult to see, as last year, even in Arizona, I stood on stage and many other states and said, you know, look, let's look at the RevPAR growth. We were on a 115 out of 119 months of positive RevPAR growth. And slightly before that, we were on a 111 out of 112, right before the downturn.
Chase,
and so,
Kim again. Can I
yes.
interrupt you momentarily? We're having difficulty seeing your slides. Are you able to share screen?
I thought I was sharing the screen. I apologize. One moment.
Sorry for the interruption. I know it's just such great information and slides we want everyone to make sure to see. Fantastic.
No, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry about that. Technical difficulties right on my end, I apologize. So for those of you who will go through this really quickly. And these were the numbers that I was saying. Here are the August 2020 numbers. Again, I do apologize for that. Kim, thank you for interrupting. And again, these slides will be made available so you can look through, but I was just showing the August 2020 data. Again, less bad than July, if that's the way you can phrase it, but again, less bad. As we looked at the absolute numbers for July compared to August. And then the year to date, which again adds in January, February, which we'd love to go back to, but then March and April, May, all the way up to August. And this is the slide that we were on where I was talking about, you can see where we were 111 out of 112 months in a row of positive RevPAR growth. Then there was a downturn in 2008, which we all know. 2001 actually was, we certainly know what that was. And then we fought back up and then we came back down. But then we were actually on a 115 out of 119 months of positive RevPAR growth until the pandemic. And you can see here, we went from positive RevPAR growth to the record-breaking, the opposite way, to a negative RevPAR growth of 80%. Now, since then, we've slowly come slide back up. And we can see here that it's less bad data, right? So August RevPAR declined again at down 47.3 from last year. And like I said, a continuation of less bad results. However, you can see that it's certainly better, but we are also taking a look at, we were on a 10% upward trajectory for May, June, July. So we're not quite sure what to look for as we look into September, October, as we can see July to August wasn't quite that 10% increase that we had seen before. ADR declines continue to slightly better each month. In August, ADR decline stood at, again, like we looked before, down 22, almost 23%. But it's very possible that the August data is the beginning of a trend that shows smaller improvements, or unfortunately, even a step back as leisure starts to slow just a little. This slide here shows 2018, 19, and 2020 for RevPAR percent change by the quarter. You can see here in Q1, this was the beginning. This was, March. What an impact that just that 1.5 month or total month had. Then when you add in Q2, you really see almost down 70%. Now we do believe Q2 is the bottom. So let's hope that that's true and we can start seeing a bounce back in Q3 and Q4. And then as we move into 2021, which we will look at the forecast later in the presentation. So as we move into the class for total US, the results are around the same, where the lower end hotels sold over half of their rooms and the upper up hotels were 2/3 empty, as you can see here. I guess a bright note is it's nice to see the luxury hotels sold 30% of their rooms, pointing at some high-end leisure travelers and resorts during vacation time. So again, always looking for some positive here. The story for the ADR you can see is almost opposite, where if we go back, we can see the occupancies for the economy, mid-scale, upper mid-scale, above the 50%. But you can see here from the ADR, it really started to have much more of a drop in ADR compared to last year, as compared to even the luxury end. Of course, we do know that 10% of the, or 2/3 of the luxury properties and upper high end are closed. So it certainly does play a part there, but interesting to see sort of how the scale flips. And as we move into the RevPAR decline story remains the same, where the upper upscale hotels, again, much different than the economy side, where we see upper upscale down 65% and the economy at just at 27% decline. So that was the total US. And again, I do apologize that you didn't see half of that, but you will, good news is it will be provided with the presentation. So as we move into the Tucson market, I first wanted to look at the August 2020 for the state of Arizona. really quite in line with the total U.S. And you'll see that really, unlike other times before, where the U.S. really tells a story for the rest of the markets across the U.S., which obviously, you can put two and two together and say that, but it's amazing how, there are some bright spots. For the most part, it really does stay in line from a market level, from a state level, from the country, how it all is in line with what has taken place over the last 6 or 7 months. So as we look at August 2020 for the state of Arizona, occupancy, again, half the hotels empty compared to last year, that was almost at 65%. From an ADR perspective, looking at almost, $86 last year, that was almost at $100, at $98. And then as we move to RevPAR, we're looking at, $63 compared to, $42. So quite a difference there from the state. Obviously nothing that anyone doesn't know, but it's certainly, you can see the percent changes for August 2020. As we move into the Tucson market, we can see here, again, not quite far off from what we saw from Arizona. And as we look here, again, occupancy still below 50%. Last year, almost at 63%. So almost a 30% change here. Again, ADR, as you look at it, we're talking about, $90 ADR, this year $83. And again, as we move into occupancy ADR and then the RevPAR, we're looking at $56 last year. So a big drop. Obviously a lot of that has to play into the occupancy, which is, at 45, not even 50% occupancy. So when we talk about our KPIs, we always know that, total revenue divided by total supply equals RevPAR. So we see here that really starts to take effect. This slide is very interesting. As we look at the markets that we obviously the far left, we see Arizona and we see the percent change, and this is for the month of August. And then as we start to compare that across multiple markets in the state of Arizona, we can see, the northern Arizona, which really kind of tells the story, the kind of the bigger areas, the less of decline in occupancy, the makeup of the properties that are in a certain area. Obviously Phoenix and Tucson, you look at CBDs, you look at areas that have taken the biggest hits with convention centers, with sporting events. You start to see occupancy really, really affected. So it's interesting to see, again, on that top row, the differences where Arizona, the state, Phoenix and Tucson really sort of in line with one another. And then northern Arizona, that market is, kind of way ahead of them as far as a decline perspective. And then quite a different story, again, on the ADR, where northern Arizona has the sort of, I guess if you could say this, least bad occupancy declines, but the ADR, almost 13% decline year over year from last year, where you see Phoenix and Tucson holding at, close to 8%. So quite interesting, again, to see all of these stacked up against one another, see how they vary, and in some ways are very similar. So as we move into the class, again, I hate to keep saying this, but a very, very similar story to the US, where we see the far right, the economy, the mid-scale, the upper mid-scales, in that above 50, well above 50 in some cases, and almost at 50 with mid-scale. And then we see, luxury at 39. So again, what a difference. And as far as an absolute number, we can see that the luxury class was at a 30% occupancy. So again, quite a bit of difference from the US, and then the luxury obviously on the Tucson side at 39. So not a big change from the US luxury to the Tucson market luxury percentage. Same can be said for even the mid, obviously right on par, where we see the mid-scale there at 49%, where from the US perspective it's at 52%. So it's just, for the first time, we really have been able to see how this is just so in line with the total US. And I say that because we're all, as you keep saying, in this together, as we all keep saying, everyone is experiencing really the same viewpoint, the same ups and downs as we move through this pandemic that's hit the globe. From an ADR perspective, we swap again. We see the luxury class, and we'll definitely on the next slide see what that looks like from just a year ago. But what a difference from luxury at $243 ADR from the economy class at $61. You know, and what's interesting here is that we've actually seen some positive growth year over year from the luxury, upper upscale, and even the upscale slid in there. So positive ADR growth, some positive news. I was happy to share that. And then we see obviously the mid-scale, the upper mids, or the mid-scale class and the economy class, we see had the better occupancies, but they've sacrificed rate a little bit to drive in. And obviously they've been open as well. There's a lot of factors that go into this, but it's interesting to see how, you know, the occupancies are higher for the economy mid-scale, but they've certainly seen some declines in the ADR, and that story stands true here in Tucson, the Tucson market. What this is looking at is an occupancy percent change and an ADR percent change. Again, this is year to date, so we're taking in January, February, all the way to the present. And again, we see positive ADR percent all the way from upper mid-scale to luxury. But we do see the largest declines in occupancy with those same classes. And as we move over to the far, far right, economy with the smallest decline in occupancy, but certainly almost equal to the largest decline in ADR percent change year over year. Again, 1.2, 1.3 for mid-scale and economy, but still certainly different from the other side where we see positive ADR growth. And as we move into the classes as far as RevPAR, from a year-to-date perspective, you know, we obviously see the upper upscale with the largest percent change at down 44% compared to last year. And from an absolute number, that number is at almost $54 for a RevPAR, compared to last year was at $97. And right behind that, you see, obviously, what's interesting to me is the upscale class actually achieved a higher RevPAR number than the upper upscale class in August, where it was $56 compared to the upper upscale class at $54. And then a big difference from the luxury class from RevPAR this year at $95. So 95 to 53 to 56 in upscale. So quite a bit of a change from the luxury to the upper upscale classes here in Tucson market. This chart is always very interesting to see. So I want to talk about the weekly demand. And what I don't have on here is the start of, you know, this really kind of starts at the decline of the weekly room demand when there were government mandated shutdowns of properties. So if we went back to the week of March 7th, the weekly room demand was at 88,000. And then we saw that number start to drop. And then obviously March 21st, you know, 3 weeks later, 39,000. And then we saw the bottom there, April 11th at 21,000. Now the good news is we started to see that number climb back up. And obviously in August the 22nd, we're almost at 60,000 rooms sold in a week. Now that number's dropped down quite a bit. When I say quite a bit, obviously not to 21, but 10 percentage points to current day or this past week. So interesting to see what happens going forward now that Labor Day is over. Some leisure travel has slowed down. But what I do know is that the hotel industry has become very nimble and creative. And I've even seen a lot of work from home, come work from the hotel. And certainly something I'm interested in to see from a personal standpoint, but also to get out of the day-to-day at the home office, but also to see how that positively affects the hotel industry from an occupancy RevPAR perspective. So next, I just wanted to show you the Tucson submarkets, just kind of how we laid it out. And again, you will have this deck so you can see, but we also included the Arizona area. And why this is important is the next slide is going to be the submarkets broken down into raw data. And again, it's a lot of information, but something I wanted you all to see. And again, you can look at this information on your own time as well. But what I did was I listed the submarkets and I selected the leader and the laggard of each category. And why this is interesting, and I've done this quite a bit this last year, is looking at sort of how the different submarkets vary. Now, in the Tucson submarkets, the occupancy is sort of right in line. The biggest variance is 50% to 43%. And the percent change is a different story, where you see Arizona, Southeast, and Sierra Vista only down 7% compared to Tucson, East Tucson at down almost 35% or a little over 35%. Same with ADR, you see 95 to 64. Again, in line from the percentage change standpoint, except at the very bottom, once again, leading the way there with the smallest decline at 1.4 with the Arizona Southeast Sierra Vista. So again, just you can see here that what a change and what differences there are between submarkets. Interesting, I always feel to see kind of where you are now, what that was compared to last year, and how that equates to neighboring submarkets. Next, we'll move to the pipeline. Really quick, from a U.S. perspective, we see in construction rooms has changed 5% year over year. And again, under contract, really under 1%. So quite a bit of change from last year from a construction room perspective. Last year we can think even up here on the label, April, 220,000 rooms were in construction at that point. So quite a change from a year ago. And that kind of tells the story here, where we can see August 2020, 217,000 rooms. So actually had an uptick from July. So interesting to see how that pattern goes as we move along throughout the rest of the year and into 2021. Now, as we look at the rooms that are in construction, we see here that 72% of those in construction rooms are made up of this area from upscale to economy. Interesting to see, really, upscale and upper mid-scale are carrying the load there, but obviously big change from the luxury at 13 and then the economy even at 6, which we know even from last year, a lot of the economies were being converted. So again, we look at here and say 72%, this is the makeup of the new rooms that are in construction. This starts to show something that we tracked as far as, rooms that have, or projects that moved to deferred and projects that moved to abandoned. And, obviously these are color coded. You can see from the deferred standpoint, obviously, June, we saw, obviously March was kind of the start of everything. June was a peak. But then also we see August in the final planning here, projects that have moved to the planning. We see here 21 projects moved to deferred from the planning and 13 projects in August from planning to deferred. And as you move to abandon, we see no really new story here, but from the planning perspective, 19 projects decided that they were just not going to do it anymore. They just decided to go a different direction. So really interesting to see from a standpoint of, from May and June, from the final planning and planning from the abandoned, there was 0. You started to see that kind of tick back up in July, and obviously in August, see the biggest changes there from abandoned projects. In the active pipeline, we can see here that Big 6 sort of dominating as far as we can tell from the Q2 2020. 84% of all of the properties that are under construction would be the IHG, the Choice, the Hilton, Hyatt, so on and so forth. And that compared to last year, or from 2010 to 2019, a big shift, right? From 59% to 83% from the Big 6, and then from all others from 41% to 17%, and a 9-year difference. Just quickly here, the large markets growth, it's rapid. Obviously with New York, again, still with the 18% of existing, talking about, rooms in construction. My hometown, Nashville, you look at rooms in construction, 50, almost 6,000 rooms. That equates to 12% of the existing supply. We do still see active construction live and well here in Nashville, even through the pandemic. So again, this just shows you sort of the top 26 markets and how construction is still active and what that percentage of existing looks like. Sort of, again, we look at in construction, final planning, and planning, the top 26 as it compares to the rest of the U.S. And we can still see, in the top 26, 95% of the projects are in planning compared to the rest of the U.S., 166,000. So really a big, you can still see the top 26 sort of make up a lot of the construction throughout the entire U.S. This is something that obviously we've continued to look at as the attrition rates. When we look at, especially this year, the projects that are in construction and looking as they move into the existing supply and how that's going to play into the performance, especially when we see the economy mid-scale with above 50% occupancies and sort of the higher end continue to stay closed or operating at a low occupancy. How does that look like when we look at the pipeline and we see the number of projects in planning and the number of projects in final planning? What are the attrition rates? We see that number a lot higher on the planning side. And as we move to construction, that 96% of the projects that are in construction, typically move into open and operating. But again, that's a long-term play. So it's just thought it was something to showcase as you look at your local area. And you see, in construction so far, there's 6 projects that are in construction. So how many of those will actually come to fruition, we shall see. Obviously, from what we can tell, there's a high percentage that it will. And then as we look at the final planning and planning, another 5 there. So again, pipeline for the market that we are discussing. And as we move into the forecast, we look at the 2019, this is again the total US. This is from a percentage change standpoint. Again, a lot of data points here, so won't go through all of them, but just wanted to highlight the 2019 actual compared to the 2020 forecast that was just updated as of August 13th. Quite a bit of difference, we know that. The positive is looking at the 2021. Now, we don't make up all the ground, obviously, but certainly we see a lot of positives on the 2021, which is really, really good to see, and some bright spots moving in to the future. So, I guess you could say highlights here, the RevPAR for 2020 down 52%. But again, we see that number almost plus 38, hopefully it gets closer to 40 as we move along for 2021. And as we look at the absolute numbers here, we see a 34% difference in decline from the RevPAR from the actual in 19 to the forecasted for 2021. Again, I'm going to move down into the local area, but wanted you all to see kind of how this compares to 131 ADR, $86 RevPAR to 103 to $41, and then on to 2021. Let's look at almost 110 and then almost $57 for RevPAR in 2021. So again, what a difference from 2019 to 2021. This is a 2020-2021 forecast for the Tucson market. Again, this is looking at absolute numbers on the 2020 forecast, and then we're looking at percent change and the same for the 2021. And what I did here was I also kind of the same story for the US, where we see positive changes, growth, which is a great word right now in 2021. So what I wanted to do was compare that to how does 2020 forecast for Tucson even compare to the 2020 forecast for the US? I thought this was just interesting to see as we look at the rest of 2020 and how it could compare to the US, as well as 2021, which at this point I am more inclined to talk about because there's positive numbers, right? As we see occupancy 53%, really in line with the total US at 52. and then ADR 107, RevPAR 57. Again, not a lot, just really wanted you to see this. This is something you all can take back when we send this presentation out. But again, I'll leave you with positive news on that 2021. There looks to be positive growth with which is what we all are really excited to see. And I know everyone has been working extremely hard through this pandemic and through 2020, what a year it's been. So some brighter spots ahead. I will say some exciting news really quick is Forward Star. If you have heard anything from STR from a marketing perspective, Forward Star is forward-looking data, as it says in its name. So anyone who has used the historical STAR, great report card, shows you how you can, use your marketing spend, your payroll spend, things of that nature. But this Forward Star product allows you to look ahead and see how you're actually doing compared to your property, your comp set, your submarket on a weekend, all the way to the next 90 days from an occupancy and as well as a pickup. More info to come on this, but just wanted to include it as well. We are launching this in North America as we speak in select markets. As you all know, STR, or you may know, was acquired by CoStar in October of last year. Really excited, a lot of new integration on the horizon, so more updates to come from that. And I will now turn it over to Kim. And once again, I really appreciate everyone's time. So sorry for the technical difficulties on my end. Thanks again.
Chase, thank you so much. Really appreciated that presentation. And I will say, if there's one thing that is predictable right now, it's that these Zoom calls are very unpredictable. So for your nimbleness and flexibility in getting the slides up. I know that they're very important for everyone to see, and really appreciate you drilling down to the local regional markets. That's just incredibly invaluable information. So thank you.
Absolutely, Kim. And I appreciate your, and everybody hopefully is understanding. Certainly appreciate the call out. That would have been really difficult.
And I want to say also, for those of you on this webinar who have additional properties throughout the state, Chase is going to be doing the trifecta today. Later today at 11 a.m. we will be covering the Phoenix metro region, and then following that be covering northern Arizona along with Lake Havasu. So Chase, a heavy lift today, and we thank you so much. If I could, I think we've got a couple of minutes here, and I would just love to ask you a little bit more about the Forward Star product. And it looks really exciting, like a great new tool for the industry to use. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the Forward Star data is looking at, again, taking the historical view and looking at how you're performing. And we all know the impact that the STAR report has. But as we look forward, how are we taking the data that we have and the spend that we're putting into, again, the marketing and the payroll perspective and looking forward? And how is that playing into the occupancy, the pickups versus the comp set versus the submarket? So again, it just keeps you on track as you move along. It's something that we're really excited about. So you have your report card in STAR, but then how are you progressing moving forward as you're making those changes going forward?
Fantastic. That looks to be very, very exciting and very valuable moving forward. So thank you for that. And again, all of Chase's slides and presentation will be made available. So we'll get those to you. One last question before we close out here and quick jump in the car and get up to Metro Phoenix. I'd like to talk about the fact that as we've seen throughout this period, we've had a lot of properties close, some temporarily, some unfortunately permanently. The data that you presented today, can you talk a little bit about how those temporary closures impact this data? Yeah,
so we look at, this year, obviously with COVID, and the temporary hotel closures on a mass level, we had to look at different methodologies. So there's a standard methodology, which assumes hotels that are closed. So it takes out that room supply out of the numbers. And then as you look at the total room inventory, it actually brings back in those room supply numbers that were taken out by the standard methodology. So really the total room inventory gives you more of a clearer picture of how the performance of a market or of a comp set is actually performing, and also the same from a forecast perspective. So again, you would notice if you compare the two that from a standard occupancy level that the numbers look a little bit better versus the total room inventory. But again, the latter provides you with a more truer picture of sort of what's taking place.
And again, so incredibly helpful in these times because things clearly are changing very rapidly and almost by the day. So thank you for that clarification. And again, thank you so much for presenting and drilling down on Southern Arizona for this presentation. We'll see you in just about an hour to cover the Metro Phoenix area. But before we go, I do want to take one last opportunity to thank our incredible sponsors for making this particular webcast possible. And that would be HSL Properties, the Ritz-Carlton Dove Mountain, STR, US Travel, and Visit Tucson. So thank you so much to our generous sponsors, and we will see you all soon in Phoenix. Again, thank you, Chase.